Post game live. I'm John Williams. We're going to talk about this game, give you the opportunity to respond, react, share your thoughts on Oklahoma's offense, Oklahoma's defense, just the totality of the game. We'll spend a little bit of time in here. It's a safe place. We can all have a good time and have fun. We'll do that on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Again, John Williams coming to you live after a 51-48 loss to the Texas Tech Red Raiders in Lubbock. And it's just one of those performances that all you can really do is just kind of laugh at it. I mean, not in a way that's like, funny so much, but just, man, just disappointing, just disappointing. It's not what we expect to see out of the Oklahoma Sooners. It's certainly not what it's definitely not what I expected to see happen in this game. I thought that they would have a chance to, get something going in the pass rush against Tyler Shuck. I thought that they'd be able to create enough pressure to make things difficult for him. And at times they did. And that's when they were able to get stops, but it just wasn't consistent enough defensively. And that's ultimately what leads to you giving up 51 points and, allowing, a guy like Tyler Shuck to, once again, another quarterback that looks like a Heisman Trophy winner against you. Again, the defense, they made some great plays at times. CJ Colton's interception was clutch. That was a huge moment for this team. It gave them life, gave them the opportunity to really take control of it at the end. But as has been the issue all season long, on the offensive side of the ball, when you need a third down conversion, you're not able to get it. Late in the game, they had a chance at, that when they kicked the field goal to go up 48-45, they had a chance to pick up a third down and they weren't able to do it. They didn't have the ability to pick up on that, third down in overtime. They decided to run draw, which, that's a conversation. That's a long conversation about Jeff Lebby. I mean, it's going to be nitpicky because, again, the offense puts up 48 points, but situational play calling at times is kind of an issue. If you all have thoughts on this, we'd love to hear them. Clandestine, he says, seriously, what now? Is this the standard? No, it's not the standard at all. This is not good. It's not what anybody expects. Brent Venables says this is, best is the standard, right? And this is not the best. Like they're not the best team in the Big 12. They're not the best team by record, in the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma State still got a better record than Oklahoma does, even though they got the Bedlam win. Greg, I agree with you. They went for it 3 times on 4th down and couldn't convert. They left a lot of points on the board. I mentioned it in my Locked On Now after the game. The fake field goal attempt when you're up 14, that's just getting greedy a little bit. And it's a little too cute. Like I love aggressive play calling. I do, but there comes a point in time when you just need to just take 3. Like it's okay when you're up 14, just take points at that point. Because every time you get points, that gives you a better opportunity to win. So that's 3 points that Oklahoma, kind of left on the board right there by going for the fake field goal. Now they had the play that they wanted, but as again has been an issue at times, situational execution has not worked out for them. They went forward on a 4th and short again later in the game, had an opportunity. They could have kicked the field goal, didn't. And then you had the Dillon Gabriel interception just before halftime that, creates a situation where I've been trying to say West Virginia. I'm just so disappointed that my mind is just going all over the place that Texas Tech is allowed to bring the game within 1 after Dillon Gabriel's interception. So, I guess that brought it to 24-13 or 24-16 after the Dillon Gabriel interception. And then on that next drive, the ensuing drive for the offense, they go conservative and they run 3 plays and don't get anything and they have to punt it back. And Texas Tech is able to go down and score again. So just it's not completely on the offense because again, they put up 48 points in this game, but you can't leave points on the board when your defense, for the most part, has struggled all year. This is a team that's done well, but it's not been consistent enough. And on this night, when, especially in the second quarter, when things started kind of to turn, third and fourth quarter, you just need to take points where you can get them. And I feel like the coaching staff kind of left that a little bit, left that to be desired a little bit. Clandestine, he says, this team doesn't huddle around Venables. They covered against a good team tonight. They're smiling and happy on the sidelines, even when they're down. I didn't check that. I didn't see the smiling on the sidelines. That's not to say it didn't happen. It's just, that's not what I saw. I would like to think that this team is still a work in progress. It is. It's obvious that that's the case. This team still has a lot of growing to do. It has a lot of defensive growing in particular to do. The last few weeks kind of gave me some hope that this team could probably grow. They could probably be better, but they were not. They were not better. They were not the team that we saw last week against Oklahoma State that put a lot of pressure on the board. It was not the team that we saw against Iowa State that, again, put a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterback. It was a team that, just couldn't find a way to do the little things well. And that's, I think, a lot of it, what it comes down to right now with this team is the little things really hurt this team. And again, the quarterback run game, which has been an issue all season long, was an issue yet again. Tyler Shuck's able to find open space in different places and pick up a lot of yards. And I expect Oklahoma to be better than that. I expect this defense to be better than that. And so, So tell me more of your thoughts. Like, I would love to hear what you had to say. I hear you. I do. EFB. I totally get you. I really do. The offense was not the entirety of the problem. It wasn't. And I'm not going to, sit here and say it was bad. It wasn't bad. It's just one of those things where when you needed a play, you just couldn't get it. When you needed a moment, you needed somebody to step up and make a play late in the game to pick up a first down. You just didn't get it. But you're right. Like, you're totally right. The offense put up 48 points that should be more than enough to win. But for a lot of the last decade for this team, you can't get elite defense and you can't, make enough stops to hold teams under 30 consistently. And so I totally get where you're coming from. And I'm reluctant to criticize anybody on the offensive side of the ball because, again, 48 points. Dillon Gabriel threw for over 400 yards. Eric Gray, had a huge game yet again for this team. He ran for 161 on 28 carries. Brayden Willis had a big game, 7 receptions for 74 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marvin Mims, 5 for 162. If I do have a criticism, it's that they didn't get Marvin Mims the ball in the second half. He had no catches in the second half after absolutely dominating and torching the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the first. He had the one that was what would have been a catch, but it got called back because of, Anton Harrison being too far downfield on the penalties that got negated. It's the little things, like somebody jumps off sides on Texas Tech, which would allow you to have a big play, but then your offensive line gets too far downfield. You have an illegal man downfield. It negates the play and you're starting over from scratch. Like, it's just the little things, man. And those little things kill you. And this team isn't capable of overcoming miscues. They're not capable of overcoming mistakes. The officiating wasn't great. I felt like there were a lot of times where Oklahoma defenders were being held and wasn't getting called, but that's not the reason they lost. The defense just didn't tackle. I don't have the missed tackle stats. Pro Football Focus will put those out tomorrow. And once they do, we'll talk about those on our next show. But yeah, you've got to be able to tackle, and they didn't tackle. I would venture to guess that there were 20 missed tackles at least in this game. And that might be a conservative number. 20 is a lot, but it might be pushing 30 because they had a really, really difficult time bringing any of them down. It didn't matter if it was the running backs, a wide receiver, if it was Tyler Shuck, they could not get it. It seemed like all night long they were having a hard time getting people down on first contact. And I think, that is part of where a lot of this disappointment comes from, is that you got to be able to tackle. It's such a basic thing. And if this team can't get better at that moving forward, it's going to be a struggle. Um, and I'd like to. I mean, I still believe in Brent Venables, but man, this game right here just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Uh, Sorry if I mispronounce your name, but Ginka Blanks says it's just a bad year for Oklahoma. Totally agree. It is a bad year. It's a down year, and many of us aren't used to that. We're not used to losing 6 games. And those of you that lived through the 90s, more power to you. You've been through this. You know that it can get better. You know that there's a come up that will happen. But yeah, it's just hard to swallow right now, right? That's the hard thing, is it's hard to swallow. Stephen G is asking, can you tell me when things will get better? I don't know if they'll get necessarily better in 2023. The reason I think that way is because you're losing. I mean, you're going to have either a lot of the same defenders, and you're losing guys like David Agwebu, Deshaun White. You're going to be relying a lot on younger players to step up and play significant parts of this defense. Danny Stutzman, I think he's made strides this year. He really has. Even though it was a rough game for the defense, I mean, that dude just keeps flying all over the place. He had 18 tackles in the game, 9 that were solo. CJ Colden, another bright spot, 12 tackles, 9 solo, the interception. He's got to get better in coverage. There are times where he's still getting beat, or he had the one big play late in the game that allowed Texas Tech to drive down the field. That was on CJ Colden. So it's it's good and bad sometimes with him, but you're going to be relying a lot on Colden and Bowman and Stutzman and Ethan Downs, and hopefully you can get Jalen Redmond back and Isaiah Coe back and Jordan Kelly. Maybe you can get some of those guys to come back and make this team, a little bit better, just with more experience in Brent Venables' defense. But you also want to hope that some of the guys that Brent Venables is recruiting, both in the 2022 class and the 2023 class, are going to be a part of what makes this thing better. So it might not be 2023 that you see significant improvement on the defensive side of the ball. It might not be till 2024 when guys like Kobe McKenzie and Jaron Kanik and Jaden Rowe and Gentry Williams and Robert Spears Jennings, Alton Tarber, Grayson Halton, R. Mason Thomas, when they're like the core of your defense, maybe that's when you start to see this defense get better. Maybe. I hope that's the case, because we've seen flashes from a lot of those guys. Like we've seen flashes from R. Mason Thomas and Robert Spears Jennings, but they're not getting significant enough snaps right now to make a significant difference on the defense. So yeah, it's hard to know. 2023 might be a lot of the same as these younger guys get acclimated and get, acclimated to college football, become, significant role players on this team. That's part of it. If you can land a guy like David Hicks or Peyton Bowen that might be able to start for you from day one, then maybe it can get better next year. Like, because those are 2 really, really good dudes that might be able to be significant parts of your defense. But putting hope in a high school senior to help transform your defense in year one, I would not bet on that. I would not put a lot of money on that one. So I would just say maybe temper expectations for 2023. There's going to be a lot of growth that has to happen. Now, if they go into next season and they are much better on defense, I'll be pleasantly surprised. And I'll sit here and be like, okay, we're starting to see something. We're starting to see the change. We're starting to see the movement on Brent Venables' defense. But until they're able to do that, I'm going to temper my expectations. I really am. And that's not to say it can't get better. It just means I'm ready to kind of sit back and just say, okay, show me it's going to be better. Do we get a kicker in the portal? That's a great question. They've got a guy, Gavin Marshall, that might be able to provide something for you. Again, it's college kickers. I jokingly say never kick on when you have a college kicker, but in some situations you just have to. And Zach Schmidt, he's been good in 40 and under for most of the season. And man, that shank at the end, I really had to look at it several times because my eyes were playing tricks on me because I just swore it went in. I was like, I don't know how you miss it so badly that I still think it goes in. It was just so weird. So yeah, I don't know if they have a kicking answer in the portal. Maybe they do, but we'll have to see. Greg Ched says O-line needs to step up. Cobra says O-line and D-line suck. I don't know if the offensive line sucks. I just think that they're not great in short yardage situations. I know they're not great in short yardage situations because when this team needs a 3rd and 3, it just doesn't seem like they can get it. But again, they created a ton of offense, as Cobra points out. Eric Gray ran for a lot of yards. It's just, again, it's situations. It's like the situations, the money downs, the 3rd down, the 4th down, like those key downs in a game. Those are the moments that you need your offense to really step up. D-line, I'm with you, man. The D-line just created zero pressure tonight. And I was very disappointed. I was really disappointed in that. I thought this was going to be a game, that they would be able to do something because Texas Tech, they've allowed more than 3 sacks per game on the season. And I don't remember what the final total is. I'm going to look at it real quick. Oklahoma had 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss, and just 3 quarterback hits on the day. A letdown. That's a letdown. Like, to me, that's a huge letdown. A team that's averaging 3 sacks per game with a quarterback that's not as mobile as Donovan Smith, he's a mobile guy. He can move around, but he's not the second coming of Tim Tebow or, Baker Mayfield or RG. I mean, he's okay. He can run a little bit, but yeah, not getting any more pressure than they did in this game. Yeah, that really hurt. That really hurt this team because they weren't able to capitalize when the coverage was good. Because there were times when Tyler Shuck's having to sit back there and wait for things to break open or get outside the pocket and try to make something happen with his legs. And the defensive line couldn't get there. It didn't matter who was in the game. Yeah, the defensive line really struggled to get there. Cobra says I would run them until they puke. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think there's going to be a lot of changes that happen over the next 9 months, 10 months or so to get ready for next year. Might see a lot of turnover. A running quarterback could be nice to have too. DG really isn't a running threat. Yeah, and they seem really, really hell-bent on using him on draw plays. And I get, sometimes it's great and it catches people off guard, but they ran so much on 3rd and long. Like when it was 3rd and 7 or more, it almost felt like almost every single time it was going to be a run or a throw behind the line of scrimmage where they're going to try and pick up some cheap yards. And I just don't know if they don't trust Dillon Gabriel to push the ball into the middle of the field, to throw the ball to the sticks, because that's what it seems like. It seems like that's the case. They'll push it downfield, but on a 3rd and 7, they're running, running back draw. They're running, wide receiver screens. They're not running like a lot of slants to the middle of the field. And Texas Tech didn't have an answer really for anybody in the wide receiver room, but that's just kind of, yeah, they struggled. Who keeps their starting job this next year? A lot of that depends on who stays and who transfers and who goes to the NFL. I think you kind of miss Andrew Rame. I think, coming back, he'll have a chance to start for this team. He'll get some competition, obviously. Who else could start? Maybe Wanya Morris if he comes back. I think Chris Murray's probably, gone to the NFL. McCade Matire was a grad transfer, I believe, and so he's probably not back. I would think Theo Wease, if he's probably back unless he transfers. Marvin Mims, I think with this game, he's probably gone. He had his first 1,000-yard season, but it's in a loss, and so it doesn't really matter. But I mean, he had 162 yards in the first half on 5 catches. Some of that was on the big 77-yard touchdown run, but still 4 catches for what? 162 minus 77. That's like 85. 4 catches for 85 yards in the first half is still really good. He just had the big 77-yard touchdown that helped, add to that. And so, yeah, I would think that if Marvin Mims comes back, obviously he's going to start. But Jalil Farouk, I think, is a starter for you. I know he's had his drop issues, but I think he's really growing into that gadget role where the kind of jack of all trades, Debo Samuel light kind of a role where he can, catch passes for you, run the jet sweeps, kick out, take kick returns. I think he's going to be a key figure in this offense next year. I think, we'll see even more, put on his plate going into 2023. Anton Harrison is going to go to the NFL. I totally agree with you. Like, he's being mocked back into the first round after months where I saw him outside of the first round. Most recent mock draft from the Draft Wire put him in the first round. And so, yeah, I agree. I think it's going to put, he's going to be in the NFL draft, which, I mean, I don't necessarily think he's had a great season. I think he's had a good season, but I think it could be better. Now there's a report out there that, somebody's trying to offer him an NIL deal to stay one more year, but that guaranteed money in the NFL is hard to pass up. So it's hard to see. Greg says teams like Tech, Baylor, West Virginia that really have nothing to play for seem to want it more than us. At least after the first quarter, that's for sure. This team, man, they got off to a great start and they had a really great, first quarter and a half, and then just kind of let up a little bit. They didn't have that same energy, same mentality, same dog in them to go out and kind of finish the game. And I don't know if that's immaturity because they're younger, they have some younger pieces, or if it's just not very good defensively. And so, Tech was able to take advantage of them and get back into the game, throwing the football, running the football. Didn't really matter. Tech was able to just do whatever they wanted, which was a far cry from the first quarter where it didn't seem like Tech was going to be able to do anything offensively. That's kind of, it's surprising to me that Oklahoma has played down at times to opponents, because I still feel like Oklahoma is the better team today. But Texas Tech just took advantage of Oklahoma's mistakes, and they were better in situations like 3rd down, 4th down, came through in clutch situations. Somebody mentioned it earlier that this team just doesn't have much clutch. I totally agree. I think this is a team that really struggles in clutch situations, and that kind of came through tonight when you needed a stop, couldn't get it. When you needed a conversion on 3rd or 4th down, you couldn't get it. Those 2 back-to-back deep balls, Marvin Mims, Dillon Gabriel led Marvin Mims just a little too far out there. And then, Jalil Farouk couldn't come up with a catch on the right sideline. It's just tough, man. And then the overtime, it was really tough to watch the overtime, the offensive series from the overtime, man. That trick play had potential to do something, but Dillon Gabriel gets lit up. The best play on the next, set of downs was the Brayden Willis Wildcat run, where he picks up 2 yards. And then after that, it's just like Texas Tech just sat on Eric Gray. Like, they ran blitzed Eric Gray. That they knew that was coming. And then Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback draw, couldn't do much. Y'all are talking about Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes. Like, yeah, that's your running back. Those are your running backs next year. Unless they add somebody in the transfer portal, you're looking at Javonte Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk. I think they both need a lot of work. I mean, we haven't seen Gavin Sawchuk. Javonte Barnes, he's had some really, really strong performances, but at the same time, I wonder what he's able to do when it's not blocked up perfectly. Because there were several times tonight where it seemed like there was room to cut back, even though the play was going one way, and he just ran right into blockers. Now, some of that's Texas Tech kind of blowing up the run play, but I need to see a little bit better vision out of him, so he's not just straight running into blockers. Stephen G, when you can't capitalize on, when you get the turnover, but you can't capitalize with TDs, why is that? I don't know. There's something with this team that it's like the defense makes a great play and the offense meh. The offense plays great, the defense meh. It's like anti-complimentary football is what this team provides, and it's hard to know exactly why that is. I think some of it is they don't have that killer instinct yet. Whether it's Jeff Lebby as a coordinator, when you're up 14-0, I mentioned earlier, you take the 3 points, you can get up to 17-0. But after a turnover, like that's when you kind of go for a kill shot, right? Like you go for the jugular. But yeah, they had to settle for 3, I think, after the CJ Colton interception. And again, it's just a lot of times it's just small mistakes, like a missed tackle, a missed block, a dropped pass, an overthrown pass. And that's really what it comes down to. But too often this team can't overcome the mistake. The drive just ends because somebody had a drop or somebody missed a block, or you had a negative play in the running game, or, whether it was the Drake Stoops, Dillon Gabriel miscommunication, which I think was an option route. And I think Drake Stoops chose correctly, because there were four Texas Tech defenders with inside leverage on Drake Stoops. So he broke outside. Dillon Gabriel expected him to go to the inside. To me, so I think that right now, and somebody mentioned it, this team just isn't good enough to take advantage of another team's mistakes. Now they did that last week against Oklahoma State and Spencer Sanders, but at the same time, you got to be able to do that consistently. You got to find that killer instinct that lets you do that. Y'all are talking about Billy Bowman. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in him myself. I thought, there were several times in coverage where he really let him down. I think there's still growth that has to happen with him. And I think that's true for a lot of the guys on the defense. Ethan Downs, a lot of people were expecting him to have a breakout year. And yeah, he had 4.5 sacks, tied for the team lead right now with Reggie Grimes, but it's not been what people expected. I think people were expecting, 6, 7, 8 sacks in this season, a break. I mean, I saw people comparing him to really good NFL pass rushers, and he's been solid, but he hasn't been really good. You know what I mean? Like, as a pass rusher, he hasn't been really good. On the night he had 4 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. You played 90 plays. The defense was on the field for 90 plays in this game, and obviously they got tired. Norwood, and he mentions Reggie and Ethan are both bad at it. I feel like their best pass rusher on this team, best pure pass rusher, is probably R. Mason Thomas. That's not to say that Ethan Downs can't develop into a better pass rusher than what he is right now. But too often this team, like this defensive line, just goes stretches without creating a pass rush. And that's the part that I struggle with, is like, how do you disappear for so long? Now, some of it is scheme, because they're running 3 down linemen and they're running, Jonah Laula, Jeffrey Johnson, and Jalen Redmond, like 3 big defensive linemen, 2 of those defensive tackles, Laula, who could play defensive tackle in some 4-man situations. So I think like that's part of it, but at the same time, like there's just a lot of guys that got to get better rushing the passer. Somebody asked, how long before we can get rid of this trash staff? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question, because you got Brent Venables here for quite some time. I would like to see them make a change at defensive coordinator, because Ted Roof just doesn't seem to be it. We can talk about the players not really stepping up in certain situations. We can talk about, making tackles, executing, and I'm sure that that's what they'll mention. They'll talk about execution, but sometimes sometimes it's on coaching too. Like if there's a reason these guys aren't executing, it's not 100% on them. Either there's either too much on their plate or they're not communicating clearly enough what the expectations are of the defense. And if they can't tackle, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, why is it so difficult for this team to tackle? I see too many times guys going in for shoulder tackles and not trying to wrap up. And that's the part that I really, really, really am concerned with. How many coaches are fired and replaced? I don't know. I don't venture anybody, to be honest. I think the one place where you could see a change is at the wide receiver coach. And that's just because LD, Washington kind of inherited the job. But I mean, the guys on the defense, like those are Venables guys. If it's not Ted Roof, like Ted Roof is probably the only guy that I'd imagine could get changed. Steven, he mentions it, wide receiver and Roof. But I don't know if Venables is going to be willing to make that change yet. Maybe he takes over the defense and starts calling the defense again. But I kind of think he's going to keep Roof around at least in an advisory role if he doesn't just outright let him go. But then who calls your defense? Like, are you going to bring somebody in? Are you going to say, hey, Miguel Chavis, take the reins. You're going to call the defense. Who do you get to call your defense at that point if it's not Brent Venables? It's hard. It's hard to know right now. Norwinning says, I don't see the Brent Venables experience working. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to go to that level just yet. I'd like to see more. It's year one. It's been a bad year. It's not been what we expected. It doesn't meet anybody's expectations. It doesn't meet even the pessimists. I think most people still thought Oklahoma was probably like a 7-win team in the regular season, probably go 7-5. Even like the most pessimistic Oklahoma Sooner fan, even a lot of people who aren't Oklahoma Sooner fans that are looking at this program and really reveling in the fact that Oklahoma's having a down year, even they probably expected Oklahoma to be even a little bit better than this. Clandestine, or who was it? Steven says, let Todd Bates be the DC. I mean, he's been, with Brent Venables for a long time. So if there's somebody that understands Brent Venables' defense, it's probably him. I just don't see him in that light, but maybe he could be great. Who knows? But I think there needs to be some kind of change because Ted Roof calling the defense just isn't working. They mentioned a lot of times in the broadcast, maybe Brent Venables took over putting signals in or calling the defense. I don't know. That's a tough question, and I don't think we'll have any answer anytime soon. I think that's going to be one of those things where we don't see much coaching turnover. Again, if there's a change at defensive coordinator, Roof probably steps into an advisory role and they promote somebody from within. But I don't see them going out and making some splash hire on the defensive side of the ball. Greg, I think you're right. I think, this is going to be a team that probably sees more roster turnover. You're going to see, sorry, I was reading Clandestine's comment there that I misinterpreted what he was saying. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to misinterpret you. That happens sometimes on the fly. I think we'll see more player turnover. I don't know. I mean, there's like guys like Clayton Smith who are already off the online roster. But I don't know how many guys could go to the NFL and have a legit chance at being drafted. Marvin Mims, Anton Harrison's about it. Like those are the only two guys. Eric Gray, Eric Gray's definitely going to get drafted. Outside Chris Murray, I think Chris Murray would get drafted too. I think he's had a really solid season at guard. Offensive linemen are hard to come by, and they've had a really good year running the football. He could be somebody's, backup interior offensive lineman. So I think you probably see like 3 or 4 guys get drafted. And maybe Brayden Willis. Brayden Willis might. Tight ends are weird positions sometimes. It's hard to know how teams are going to value him because so much has been placed on pass catching. And Brayden Willis is a good pass catcher, but really where he makes his living as a blocker. How much are teams going to value that over his receiving ability? Again, it's a solid receiving. He's good at receiving, but will his season have provided enough evidence to that fact? That's going to be the question on Brayden Willis. But I think Brayden Willis gets drafted. And then I didn't mean to bring that one up. Terry says, I thought Levy was going to be the man. However, I think his play calling is very suspect. I think it just doesn't flow well. It's like they're either all runs or all deep shots or all wide receiver screens. Sometimes it's just like it doesn't seem like there's much diversity in his play calling. And that can be a problem. When things are humming, man, it looks great. Everything is going well. Things are flying. And then, you have a 3rd and 10, and then you run a draw play with your quarterback, or you run, it's 3rd and 7, and you're running to set up 4th down. Those are some of the things that I have a problem with. Yeah, Norwooding, I'm with you, man. I'm so tired of seeing the behind the line of scrimmage passes. It's like, if you're going to do that, just run the football. Just run it with Eric Gray, because he's been your best offensive player, your most consistent offensive player all year long. I'm not going to say he's the most valuable, because we saw what happened in the Texas game when we didn't have Dillon Gabriel. But if you're going to throw it behind the line of scrimmage, at least throw the wide receiver screen. That the play where Eric Gray motions into the backfield, comes behind Dillon Gabriel, and then on the snap runs the other way, and they throw it like 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage on a screen. I'm like, what even is that? You're setting yourself back on purpose and hoping that you can block well enough to pick up some yardage. That play does not work. If you're going to throw it, then throw it to the sticks, like I've been clamoring for on social media and on the show. Do that. Like, throw it down the field. Like, the downfield passing game was really doing really well. I mean, they had a couple misses, but you're not going to hit every throw over 20 yards. But yeah, man, you gotta find a way to quit relying on the wide receiver screen. Like, if that's all you got, then that's rough. Winning, unfortunately, I think we go 6-6. Maybe it's possible. We talked about it on our show a little bit. I think, Dillon Gabriel is going to be your starter next year. Somewhat out of loyalty, but I think the offense will be good enough that you won't really see much reason to make a change. Oh, Norwooding, don't talk about hiring Urban Meyer. That would make me really sad. I would be really sad about that. Clandestine asks where we go as a team. You just kind of hope for the best at this point. You hope that the guys that you bring in through the transfer portal, you go. It's more than it's the dude. I cannot get behind Urban Meyer. But anyway, that's not even going to happen, because Brent Venables is going to be the coach for quite some time. This team is going to get better. Steven asks, I don't know. I don't think Evers is ready. I don't think they're going to if all things are equal, they're going to go with the veteran presence. If all things are equal, they're going to go with Dillon Gabriel. That's just the way it's going to be. Look at this season as kind of the template for how they see freshmen. Like, they don't necessarily see the potential. They see the reliability. If you can't be reliable, or if you're going to make some mistakes, then they're not going to necessarily turn to you. You've got to be, on the money, like on the same page as everybody else, and not making freshman mistakes. And I think that there's, as much as Brent Venables wanted to talk about having an aggressive mindset, being a fast, paced offense, being an aggressive defense, at times it seems like this team played or coached conservatively. It seems like this team coached kind of scared. And there's a lot of growth that has to happen. I think this was one of those games where it was a reminder that Brent Venables is a first-year defensive coordinator or first-year head coach. And sorry, I was reading Norwooding's comment. And he's got a lot of growing to do. This is not the end product for Brent Venables, but he has a lot to learn, because I feel like this team just had very poor situational game management. And again, that's That's the offense, that's the defense, that's the coaching staff, the special teams. It just didn't come through. And the coaching didn't really help much either. So no, I don't think that either, Nick Evers or Jackson Arnold, as great as Jackson Arnold is, that dude's the truth. Like he will be great when his time comes, and maybe it does come next year, but I just don't see the offense being so bad that they'll have to make a change. You know what I mean? Like Dillon Gabriel's shown for the most part this year that the offense is pretty good with him at the helm. Now he's had some down games. He's had some situations where it wasn't good, but over the course of the year, I mean, it's been pretty good. Again, they scored 48 points tonight. So as much as we can say, like, and myself, I'm even hypercritical of the offense, mostly because I'm an offense guy. Like I love offense and I love wide receiver play and in the passing game. So I'm a little bit hypercritical of that. They still scored 48 points, put up a ton of yards, had this team in a position to win the game, but the defense couldn't come through and make the necessary stops. So as much as we want to talk about the defense or the offense and having to get better themselves, a lot of it comes down to the defense has to be better. And that's really what it comes down to. Like the defense has to make significant strides moving forward. It has to. It can't be a team that gives up 51 points and expects to win. You're not going to win games like that. I don't care who your offense is. Even in the Lincoln Riley era of great offense, you were going to be really hard pressed to win games if your defense gives up 50 points. Even if your defense gives up 40 points. Like that is a terrible expectation to put on an offense to go out there. Yet you have to score 40 points or we have zero chance. That's not reasonable. That's not going to happen. If Brent Venables can't turn this defense into an above average defense, I don't even need it to. I want it to be elite. I want it to be a Clemson defense. But if he can't even turn it into a top 40 or top 50 defense, then what are we doing? Like he won't last long. And as Clandestine mentions, he might be Charlie Strong, Will Muschamp. I'd hate that for him because he seems like a really good dude, but he's going to have to be a lot better. And he and the defensive staff have got to figure out a way to generate pass rush, to help this team tackle better, and to figure out their coverage situation because the coverage was not good tonight. I mean, they had one guy go for 176 yards, I think. Who was it? Jaron Bradley had 173 yards on 8 receptions, targeted 13 times in this game. So, yeah, I mean, Tyler Shuck, he threw for 436 yards, completed 62% of his passes on 50 attempts. That dude looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the conference in this game. And that's been happening, far too often, is that whatever team they play against will have a great quarterbacking performance. Maybe last week, just the turnovers by Spencer Sanders and the conservative nature of the game management by Mike Gundy allowed Oklahoma to kind of stay in that game. But yeah, the Texas Tech was able to, take advantage of poor pass defense by the Oklahoma Sooners. It was just a really disappointing effort, just incredibly disappointing. I don't know if, they'll go 6-6, but yeah, they're going to have to see improvement. I mean, otherwise it's going to be a really impatient fan base. It's going to be a really impatient, situation. I don't know if Joe C is going to be all that impatient. I mean, you rush 3 and you're going to have a horrible pass rush. Dabo doesn't go 6-6. How are we number 1 in tackles for losses, but we give up so many points? Because you can't cover well. And then you're not getting adequate pass rush. I mean, you can get tackles for loss because you're decent in the run game and you've had some big, tackle for loss games, but you've also had some games where you have no pass rush. And that was again tonight. Like after the first quarter, they had 0 pass rush. And Texas Tech figured them out. Texas Tech figured out what they wanted to do. Even when they wanted to blitz, like even when they brought a blitz, 6-7 man blitz, they couldn't get there. They were just like walking through mud. This team has not been good on the road this year. They're 2-3 on the road. Their wins against Iowa State and against, who was the other win? Against blanking. Maybe they weren't 2-2 on the road. Oh yeah, they beat Nebraska. They beat Nebraska on the road. So 2-2 on the road. Your only wins, 2-3 now on the road, and your only wins were against Nebraska and Iowa State. It's not good. It's not good at all. Yeah. Thanks, Blake. I got there. Eventually, I eventually get there. There's so many thoughts rolling around in my mind tonight. Just because it's so hard to watch this team right now. And it's so hard to get excited and feel optimistic, because that's me. I'm generally an optimistic person. If you've watched this show for much of the last, year as I've been hosting it on YouTube, or if you've listened to the show for the last couple of years as I've been hosting it on the podcast side, I'm an optimistic person. I usually, tend to see the possibilities. It's hard to see the possibilities. It's hard to look at this team going into next year and seeing much significant improvement unless they can make some significant splashes in the transfer portal, unless they can talk some guys into coming back. It's hard for me to believe that this team makes a significant improvement. They've got Marvin Mims, but he's gone. Like, it's not like Texas, they went 5-7 last year, but coming back, they had Xavier Worthy and Bijan Robinson and JT Sanders, and, we're getting Quinn Ewers. And so they had a pretty good offense. They had a really good defensive line. Like, Texas made significant improvements. I'm hoping Oklahoma can do the same, but I'm not holding my breath on it. Yeah, Steven, my pleasure, man. This is kind of the first time we've really done this. We're going to try and do this more next year, live streams after the show. But to me, I needed it. Like, I needed to come on here and just kind of talk through and process some of this, because it was not good. It was not good enough, and it wasn't good. Cobra, you're right. Saban went 7-5 his first season. But I'd have to go back and look, like, what did those losses look like? Was his defense giving up, 51 points in a game? I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that and check it out. But I'm a patient man. I'm willing to give Brent Venables some time. I thought a couple weeks ago, I said, by 2024, 2025 is when we should really start seeing this team take a turn. If by 24 and 25, this team isn't starting to make significant headway on the defensive side of the ball in particular, because offensively, they're going to be fine. However I feel about Jeff Lebby, they're going to be able to put up points. Again, this team put up 48 points and they lost. It needs to be better, but I think they'll be okay, especially with Jackson Arnold coming in. I think that dude is the truth. I think he's going to be a Heisman Trophy contender at some point in his career. Yeah. I hate to say it. I do, because the optimist in me wants to say next year it's going to be better. Next year it's going to be different. It's going to be so much better. But I need to see who they add in the transfer portal. I need to see who they add in the recruiting class. But again, I don't want to sit here and rely on true freshman players to transform a defense. That doesn't seem like a great plan. And so I don't know that they'll necessarily be better next year. They added Jacob Lacey, the defensive tackle from Notre Dame, in the transfer portal, but to me, he kind of feels more like a Jeffrey Johnson type, a guy that might be okay, might be pretty good, but had his best game of the year this year against Notre Dame, and then had a hard time getting snaps after that. Or sorry, not against Notre Dame, for Notre Dame against Cal, and they had a hard time getting snaps, and then enter the transfer portal. And so you're like, what do you do? Like, okay, maybe he's good. Maybe he's a good player. We'll have to see. So it's there's a lot to improve upon. Like, the secondary's got to be better. And I like some of the young guys that they have that were true freshmen this year, especially Robert Spears Jennings. I like Gentry Williams, but I want to see them on the field, contributing, playing, seeing what they're going to be able to do in full-time roles. I think Billy Bowman still's got a lot of potential. I really do. He was up and down this year. This year was kind of rough. I felt like he was going to be better. At the same time, as Norwooding's mentioned, the D-line is a problem. When you can't get a pass rush, it's really, really hard on your secondary. It really is. You can have Deion Sanders back there. I don't care. If there's no pass rush, you're going to have a really, really hard time getting stops. You're going to have a really hard time covering. And so I think they're going to be able to turn around. I just think it takes time. And I hate to do that, in college football when, all that matters is what happened today. All that matters is, the game that you played. You hate looking forward and be like, sorry guys, next year it might not be better. Sorry guys, next year it might not be different. But coming after a loss, that's kind of how I feel. If they would have won the game, maybe would have felt differently. If they would have won 51-48, this live stream would have felt a lot different. I mean, we'd still have some criticisms about the defense, but we'd feel a little bit differently about this team because the offense would have made enough plays for them to win, or the defense would have made enough stops for them to win. But here we are, 6-6, and going to a bowl, that's fine. It is what it is. It's not something I'll get too terribly excited about because it's just a bowl game. I think there's too many of them, to be honest. But it's good for the kids. They'll have a good time. It's good for the university. Gets exposure. Get some cash. But I'm also concerned about who they get matched up with. A lot of the projections lately have been South Carolina with the way South Carolina's played lately. I don't want to face them. I really don't. Spencer Rattler, I think could torch this defense, and he would have a fun time doing it. Stephen G asks, do we lose more recruits or gain any before the bowl? I don't think we lose anymore. I think the guys that we lost, Colton Vasek, not too terribly surprising. The dude's dad played for Texas. He's from Austin. He grew up a Texas fan. So it was weird. It's weird that he committed to Oklahoma in the first place. And then on Anthony Evans, he committed to Oklahoma, but I guess the way the story goes is he committed at the end of August, and the way September goes, he was already committing to Georgia just silently. And so that one kind of doesn't surprise me. Jimmy says no chance with Hicks. I don't think there's no chance. I think there's as good a chance as anything. And Steven asks, can we skip the bowl? No, they won't skip the bowl. They'll go play. Hopefully it'll be a good opportunity for the young guys to get some snaps. If this team is able to add some, I just don't think whatever they get in the 2023 class will be able to contribute right away. So, but we'll have a lot of time to talk about the recruiting because that's really all that'll be a big part of our show over the next month, even as we get to the bowl game. But yeah, this team is not a good team. That's really what it comes down to. Hoping for your defense to get a stop when you're up 48-45 in the final few minutes of the game, and they couldn't do it. And that's kind of been the issue all year. Even though they had some good performances against, some not so great offensive teams, they couldn't get stops against West Virginia when they needed to. They couldn't get stops against Baylor when they needed to. And again, tonight, they couldn't get stops against Texas Tech. So it's a rough one. It's a tough one to swallow, especially when you're up 14-0, up 24-6, and you lose this game because you're like, yeah, it's a tough one to swallow. Because Oklahoma was dominating that game through the first 20 minutes or 24 minutes of the game. So we'll have more to say about this. Landry, thanks for stopping by and saying OU sucks. Yeah, we know. They're not very good right now. So we'll have more to say. We'll go into the week. We'll talk through more about where this team needs to head, what they need to do to improve, to get better for 2023, try to talk about some realistic expectations. We'll talk recruiting. We'll talk about the bowl game. But yeah, there's a lot that's got to get better. And love this team. Big fan of the Sooners. At the same time, job here is to talk about him. And it's hard to talk about. So thanks so much for stopping by the live stream. We appreciate everybody coming in. Yeah. So thanks Landry for stopping by, being a Tech fan. You guys played a heck of a game tonight. We kind of gave you some opportunities, but we also kind of hurt ourselves in this game. And that was the crap. That was the crap part of it. That's the crap part of it, is that we had it 24-6 rolling, struggling. And that's really all I got to say right now. Well, I'll process this one. I'll be writing more about it over at SoonersWire.com. So you can go check out my work over there. And myself and Josh will be back to record Sunday night for our Monday show. And then we'll have our live stream on Monday night as well. We'll continue to break down this game. We'll have a lot to say about this game all week, I'm sure. So thanks so much for coming by, stopping by the live stream. I know it's late, but hope it was a good opportunity for you to kind of vent some of your frustrations as well. Continue to do that over in the comment section. You can also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sooners and on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. But until next time, thank you again so much for being here. We'll talk to you